In today's video, we're going to be looking at functions in Python. Functions happens to be a very important concept in programming. And basically, functions allows us to group functionalities together. In essence, allowing us to write code once and reuse it as many times as possible. So to define a function in Python, you use the def keyword followed by the name of the function. Let's say this function is greet, and then you provide a parenthesis. And then after the parenthesis, you put a colon, after which you can now provide statements or codes that you want to run whenever the function is being called. So in this case, I'll say print, and then I say hello. This is a function with the name greet. So you define a function by specifying the def keyword followed by the name of the function, and the next thing is to provide the parentheses, and after which you now provide the instructions to be executed whenever the function is called. And in this case, we want it to print hello. So if you want to make this function to execute the codes inside of it, you have to call the function. And for you to call a function, all you need to do is just to provide the name of the function. Assuming I run this program, nothing happens. And the reason why nothing happens is because I have not called the function. So in order to put the function into use, you have to call the function. And to call the function, all you need to do is to provide the name of the function. So I'm going to type greet and then provide a parenthesis. So if I now run this program, it's going to print hello for me. If you just define a function without calling it, nothing happens. But to make the function perform its duty, you have to call the function. Now we're going to improve on this function. If you look at this function, the function is just there. Nothing so special about it. So in order to make this function more dynamic, I have to make use of parameters. So I'm going to specify a variable inside of this parenthesis. In this case, I can say name. Now I can decide to remove this line of code, and I can say message is equal to, then I use the f string and then provide the quotation mark. I can say hello, and then I provide the curly braces and then provide the name. I can now say print message. So if I run this program, I'm going to have an error. And if you look through the error message, it's telling us that we are expected to provide a positional argument. So, and this is because I defined this function with a parameter, and as such, if I'm to call this function, I'm expected to provide an argument. So I can go ahead and put Mary here. So I'm going to clear my terminal, and if I run this program, it's going to show me hello Mary. So now before we continue, I have to differentiate between parameters and arguments. So during your function definition, the variable that you put inside of the function definition or inside of this parenthesis is called a parameter. And then during the function call, you now provide the real data or the information that the function is supposed to make use of. This information or data that you provide inside of the function call is called an argument. So in other words, when you are defining a function, you have parameters, and when you're calling a function, you use the argument. Now I'm going to define another function, but this time around we're going to define a function that will perform addition. So I can call this function calc. So I can say def, and I say calc, and then I'm going to provide two parameters. Let's say num1, and then I have num2. I'm going to provide the colon, and then after which I can say result is equal to maybe num1 plus num2. Then I can say print result. I've defined a function with two parameters, and what this function does is that it sums up the values of the parameters and returns the sum. So for me to call this function, I'm going to say calc, and then I provide the parentheses, and then I'm expected to provide two arguments. In this case, I can say 2 and 3, so that if I run this program, it's going to give me 5, which is 2 plus 3, giving us 5. So let's go ahead and define another greet function. In this case, I can say def, and I say greet. And then I provide the parameter. I can use name, and then provide the colon. I can have something like message is equal to, I'll use the F string, and I can say good morning, and then I specify the name, and then I put a full stop. So now I'm going to print the message, so I can say print, and then I say message. So now I've finished defining my function. The next thing for me to do is to call the function. So I can say greet, and then I provide my argument. So I can use Steve, and then if I run this program, it's going to give me good morning, Steve. So this is the normal way of calling this function, but we can actually define this function in such a way that even if we did not provide an argument, the program or the function will know how to respond. So I can assign this parameter to a value. So in this case, I'm going to say is equal to, and then I provide something like sir or ma. So what this means is that if I call the function without providing the name, it's going to use this value. So, but first of all, let's run this program and see what it will give us. So if I run this program, it's still going to give us good morning, Steve. But if I call this function without specifying the arguments like this, and I run the program, it's going to give me good morning, sir or ma. This kind of function is called function with default argument. So what it means is that even if you don't provide an argument, it's going to work with the default value provided when the function is being defined, which is this. So that's how to define a function with a default argument. A lot of times you might be defining your function using the return keyword. So let's give an example. So I'm going to define a function with the name add. So I can have def, and then I provide the name, which is add. And in this case, I'm going to say num1, and then I have my num2. And then put my colon. I can say that result is equal to num1 plus num2. And then I will now use the return keyword. So in this case, I'm going to say return, and then I provide results. So basically what this return keyword is going to do is that after computing the sum of num1 and num2 and assigning the value to the result, so when you call the function, it's going to return the sum of num1 and num2 instead of printing it. If I call the function by saying add, and then I provide num1 and num2, that is the argument. In this case, I'll say 2 and 3. If I run this program, nothing happens because we're using return keyword this time around instead of print. Assuming I had written print here, it would have printed the value. So what it means is that if I want to access the value, I'm going to assign the value to a variable. So in this case, I can say result is equal to add. So I'm calling on the function, and then I'm providing the argument. So this function is going to perform the computation and assign the value to the result. So that if I now say print results and run this program, it's going to give me the sum, which is 5. So now we're going to be looking at the positioner and keyword arguments. So we're going to demonstrate this using a function. So in this case, we're going to have a function. Let's call this function calc. And then I have num1 and I have num2. And then perhaps we can have num3. And then we'll put our colon. And then we can say that result is equal to num1 plus num2, and then we'll say num3. Then we can say print result. So we can have it like this. If we want to call this function, we can say calc, and then we'll provide the arguments. Let's say we'll have 1, 2, and 3. So if I run this program, it's going to give me 6. So what this means is that during the function call, the first argument that I provide is linked to the first parameter in the function definition. The second argument is linked to the second parameter in the function definition. And then the third argument is linked to the third parameter in the function definition. That is what positional argument is all about. So the positions matter. So let's say I remove this parameter and then I remove this other one. And then instead of using the plus sign, I'll put the minus sign. So in this case, I'm going to remove this 3 here so that if I run this program, it's going to give me -1. And why is this so? Because num1, which corresponds to 1, is equal to 1, and then num2 corresponds to 2, which is 2 in this case. So when we say 1 minus 2 is going to give us -1. So if I have, let's say 3 here and I have 2 here, so what this means is that this 3 corresponds to num1 and this 2 corresponds to num2. So in this case, num1 minus num2 is going to give us 3 minus 2. So, which is going to give us 1. So when we talk about positional arguments, the order in which you place the argument matters. If I interchange this and put this as num2 minus num1 and run this program, we're going to have a different outcome. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is keyword arguments. Instead of calling the function using the positional argument, I can call the function like this. I can say calc, and then I will say num1 is equal to 4, and I can say num2 is equal to 2. So that if I run this program, it's going to give me -2. So using keyword arguments, I don't have to adhere by the positions. Normally, if I'm to call this function, I'm supposed to provide num1 first and then provide num2. But using keyword argument, I can decide to provide num2 first. In this case, num2 is equal to 4, and then I can change this one to num1. So let me clear my terminal. So if I run this program, it still works. In the next video, we're going to be looking at files and file operations in Python.